Welcome students. So, after learning conceptually the concept of flexible budgeting, now we will discuss solve a mini case and we will try to learn the process of preparing the flexible budgets, and in this case we have to first understand the information given in the case, try to find out what exactly is required in this case and how to prepare the flexible budget from this information, right. For your reference, I would like to tell you that these cases, the two cases which I discussed with you in the master budget and this case which I am discussing in case of the flexible budget, I have referred to the book that is Management Accounting. Book is entitled as Management Accounting, written by C.T. Horngreen and Stanton. This is a Prentice Hall publication. All these cases, sub cases, solved and unsolved, are given in that book. So, for the further reference, and if you want to understand this process in detail, if you are not able to understand anything here, for any doubt, you can refer to that book which is easily available in the market. The book is Management Accounting by the C.T. Horngreen and Stanton, and it is the Prentice Hall publication. So, in that book these cases are given as unsolved cases. So, we are taking the cases, I am taking the cases from that book which is given in the course plan also. That is the first book I have given in the course plan for this course. So, you can refer to that book. All these cases are given in that book and I am referring from that book these cases, and these unsolved cases I am going to solve here for your reference, so that you can understand the concepts of budgeting, that is the master budget and the flexible budget, in the proper manner and in the greater detail, right. So, now let us understand what is required in this case, what information has been given in this case. Now, what is given here is Drake Shipping Company's general manager reports quarterly to the company's president on the firm's operating performance. The company uses a budget based on the detailed expectations for the forthcoming quarter. The general manager has just received the condensed quarterly performance report shown in the exhibit 8.10, which is exhibit given here. This is exhibit. So, it is 8.10 exhibit given here, and in this exhibit the general manager has just received the condensed report, quarterly performance report shown in this exhibit, and this exhibit is this, that is where we are given the budgeted information, we are given the actual information, and then we are given the variances also which are calculated. So, budgeted information was for the 800, it is 80 lakhs of the revenue, and the budget was for the 80 lakhs, actual performance is 76 lakhs worth of the sales or the revenue, and we have found out the variances given in the last column, right. And similarly, if you look at this now information given, the general manager has just received this report, condensed report. Although the general manager was upset about the not obtaining enough revenue, as she was happy that her cost performance was favorable, right. Though the revenues are not very much favorable, they have not got the revenue to the larger extent, they are not up to the mark. For example, revenue target was 80 lakhs and for this quarter, and actual the revenue has come up is 76 lakhs. So, revenue has come down, but if you talk about the cost part, so cost has come down, that has been controlled to the larger extent and the cost has decreased. So, you can say that the variances which are unfavorable, means finally in the operating income also, if you look at this variance, this is negative, that is unfavorable to you can call it as how much this is the 2,24,000 of the negative variance in the operating income is there, but because actual income is $3,96,000 operating income, whereas the budgeted income was 6,20,000. So, there is a negative variance of the 2,24,000, but still she is happy that though the revenue is not up to the mark, but cost being under control, variances have not gone much beyond the control, they are negative variances, but they are still means you can call it as that not very bad, means the situation is still under control. The president was totally unhappy and remarked, I can see some merit in comparing actual performance with the budgeted performance, because we can see whether actual revenues coincide with our best guess for the budget purposes, but I can't see how this performance report helps me evaluate cost control performance, right. So, looking at this information given about the budget and about the actual information, and the variance is given to us, and this information is about the sales, variable cost and the fixed cost and the operating income. What is required for us to do? Prepare a columnar flexible budget for direct shipping at revenue level of say how much, 70 lakhs, 80 lakhs and 90 lakhs dollars. That is the sales level of the 70 lakhs, 80 lakhs and the 90 lakhs of the dollars. So, use the format of the last 3 columns. So, it means the format which I have discussed with you in the PPT, we have to use that format and assume that the prices and mixes of the products sold are equal to the budgeted prices and the mix. Second requirement is express the flexible budget for the cost in the formula form, and third requirement is prepare a condensed table showing the master budget variances, the sales activity variances and the flexible budget variances. And for that, the format which we have to use is, I have already discussed with you in the conceptual part, that format is already given in the PPT. So, you refer to the PPT for the third statement's purpose, and you will be very clear about that how to prepare a statement which helps us to calculate the sales activity variance and the flexible budget variance, where you have to make the comparison between the master budget and the static master budget and the flexible budget for the same level of production, and then the comparison between the actual level of performance and the flexible budget at par or equal to the flexible budget, and then try to find out the variances. So, that last statement will be very important for us, and after that we can go for the finding out the reasons why the variances have occurred, where the cost has increased, where the revenues have, means why the revenues have come down, and what are the reasons that the operating performance has not been up to the mark, or the operating loss which was expected to be, means if you talk about the operating income, that was expected to be $6,20,000, but actually it is $3,96,000. So, there are the variances of $2,20,000 and they are the unfavorable variances. So, these cases you might be finding out they are given in dollars because they are from the foreign author's book. This is an American author. These 2 or 3 authors, these is the group of the authors, C.T. Horngren, Stanton and one more, they are Americans. So, they have written that in that context, but it does not affect us, because ultimately the process is same, whether you talk about the Indian economy, you talk about American economy, anywhere. The process of preparing the flexible budgets is same, whether you are doing it in dollars, rupees or any other currency, that does not affect us while learning about the process of flexible budgeting or learning the concept of the flexible budgeting, right. So, now our job is we have to prepare these required statements, and we have to start with preparing the columnar flexible budget for the 3 levels of production, that is the 70 lakhs, means that is for the 7 millions, 8 millions and 9 millions worth of the revenue, and then we will have to make a comparison between the actual sales activity level, that is 76 lakhs revenue, and then comparing it with the 80 lakhs of the budget. So, budget we are given here is 80 lakhs and actual performance is 76 lakhs. So, what we will do here is we will have to do the 2 things. Number 1 is the master budget is for 80 lakh, means 8 million worth of the dollars, actual performance is 76 lakh dollars. So, what we have to do here is, while preparing that, means the finally the summary statement or the variance statement, you will put in the last column the master budget information, that is 8 million worth of the revenue. Then in the third column there will be the flexible budget for the actual level of production, that is the 76 lakhs dollars, and then comparing the 2 variances, those variances will come up as sales activity variances. Then you have to prepare the column number 1, that is the actual performance or the actual results at the actual activity level, and then compare the column number 3 with the column number 1, and then you have to find out the flexible budget variances. So, we will prepare that statement, but before that our requirement in this case is to prepare the budget for different levels of production and sales, and these different level of the production or maybe the sales and the costs and the operating incomes at the 3 levels, that is the 7 million, 8 million and 9 million dollars, that first we will be preparing, and then we will be preparing the statement, that is a summary of the performance comparing the master budget of 8 million worth of the revenue with the 7.6 million worth of the revenue, which is actual performance, and we will try to find out the reasons for those variances, right. So, now let us go for preparing the budget. I will put the title here is flexible budget. So, the title for this will be flexible budget, flexible budget and variance analysis, flexible budget and variance. What is required to be done here? That is the flexible budget, flexible budget and the variance analysis. Variance analysis, and the amount we have to take here is, that is the amount we have to take here is, that is in the thousands of dollars, right. So, amount in thousands of dollars we will be taking here, and finally, we will be preparing this budget. So, for this purpose we have to prepare a 3 columnar budget for 3 levels, and if you prepare this budget, so again we will have to create a statement like first column is for particulars, first column is for particulars, then is the you can call it as the level of activity, particulars, level of activity. So, particulars, level of activity. So, if you take the level of activity, that is first is 7 millions, then it is for the 8 millions, and then is for the 9 million level of the revenue or the sales, right. So, we are starting with the revenue. What is this? Because we are taking the figures in thousands, so it means finally it is the 70 lakhs, 80 lakhs and then the 90 lakhs, and what this amount is? This particular you will put here is the sales revenue. This is the sales level or the sales revenue, which is 70 lakhs, 80 lakhs and 90 lakhs, 7 million, 8 million and 9 million, right. Now, we will have to take the cost here less the cost, and the first part of the cost is what? That is the variable cost, and what is the variable cost? First head is fuel. So, we will take this is, that is fuel, and second one is the repair and maintenance. So, it is the fuel cost. So, we have taken the sales revenue, which is 7 million, 8 million and the 9 million. So, it means now you look at the focal point here is the 8 million worth of the revenue, which here it is given to us. So, what we have to do is now that to prepare the budget for the 2 other levels, which is not prepared here. So, it is a situation of the static budget and not the flexible budget. So, it means we have to first convert that budget of the 8 million worth of the revenue to the 7 million and 9 million, and then we have to compare the performance, which is actual, which is somewhere in between the say this is 8 and 9. So, here the focal point is the 8 million. So, you can simply, I say that the variable costs are proportionate to the change in the level of the revenue or the level of sales. So, variable cost changes in the same proportion. If the revenue goes up, variable cost will go up, total variable cost will go up. If the revenue comes down, variable cost will come down. So, we are assuming here that for example, 8 million level of the revenue, your fuel cost is how much? That is $160,000. So, it is $160,000. So, I am putting it here $160,000. So, proportionately coming down, how would it be, much would it be for this level, that is 140, and if you increase the level from 8 million to 9 million. So, this will be what? It is 180. So, in this case we have found out the fuel cost for the 3 levels, taking the 8 million worth of the revenue as the base. Next is the repair and maintenance. Repair and maintenance. So, if you take the repair and maintenance, what is the repair and maintenance cost here? Repair and maintenance cost given here is 80,000. So, proportionally we will have to change it, putting here as the 80,000, taking from that case how much will it be? 70,000, and in this case it will come out as 90,000. That is a repair and maintenance. Next item is what? Next head is supplies and miscellaneous. So, it is supplies and miscellaneous. So, how much it is? Supplies and miscellaneous is going to be how much? This is 800 given to us, and for this will come up as 700s and this will come up as 900s, right. This is the supplies and miscellaneous, and then is the variable payroll. Next item is variable payrolls. So, if you take the variable payrolls, how much it is given for the 8 millions? It is given to us is the 5360 thousands. So, we will take it as 5360 and proportionately bringing it down. So, it will work out as 46 something 4690 for this, and in this case it will work out as 6030, right, 6030 as the variable payrolls. And is there anything left? Fuel, repair and maintenance, supplies and miscellaneous, variable payrolls. So, it means almost we have taken everything. Here also are given only the 4 things. So, we have taken here. And what is the total variable cost? Total variable cost is how much? You total it up, the total variable cost is how much? We are taking it up as the total variable cost, and total variable cost for this level is how much? 6400 thousands or the 64 lakhs. At this level it should be proportionately coming down. So, it means 56 lakh dollars, and in this case it will be automatically going up to 72 lakh dollars, right. So, this is the total variable cost we are taking here. Now, we will have to go for subtracting, this is the total variable cost, and now we will go for the less fixed cost. This is the total variable cost we calculated here. Now, let us calculate the fixed cost, and finally, we will calculate the say your total profit, means the total cost we will calculate, and we will calculate the operating income. So, what is the fixed cost now? Fixed cost will not change at all, because for the 8 million level, what is the fixed cost? 180, 160, 480 and 160, that will remain the same. So, you cannot change this. So, what is this? First is the supervision. Supervision cost is how much? It is 180, and then we will take the next one. It is again the 180 here. Whatever the level of production and sales you have, that will not change, again it will be 180. This is the supervision. Then is the, this is the supervision, right. Next head is rent. Rent is also the fixed cost, and it is again 160, then it is 160, and then it is 160, fine. Then is the depreciation. What is the depreciation cost now? Depreciation is 480, and it is the 480, right. Then is the other fixed cost, OFC. Other fixed cost is, what is given to us is 160, this is again 160, and this is again 160,000 same. So, it is 1,80,000, 1,60,000, 4,80,000 and 1,60,000, right. Now, you calculate the total fixed cost. This is the total variable cost. Now, you calculate the total fixed cost. So, what is the total fixed cost? Total fixed cost here is how much? Total fixed cost if you take here is, this works out as 567, it is $980,000, $980,000, $980,000, right. This is the fixed cost. So, you can close it, and finally, summing up the total variable cost and total fixed cost. If you take these two into consideration, how much it works out as? Total cost. Total cost of production, and if you take the total cost of production here, how much is this? This will be $6580, then it is $7380, and then it is $8180,000, right. Now, we calculate the operating income. This is the operating income. If you calculate the operating income, so how it will be calculated? It will be sales minus this amount. So, what is the sales? It is 7 millions, and how much is the total cost is 6.580 million. So, it means what is going to be now the operating income? The operating income will be, you can say that is $100, $420,000, then it is how much it is? $620,000, and then lastly it is 820 for the 9 million level of revenue, 620 for 8 million level of revenue, and 420 for the 7 million level of the revenue. So, this is the flexible budget and the variance analysis. So, first we have created the flexible budget, and now we will go for the variance analysis. So, we will prepare the second statement for that, and while preparing the second statement for that, we will have to first create the columns for this variance analysis. So, budget, flexible budget part we have done, and this variance analysis we will do in the next statement. So, let us go for that statement. Next statement is the summary of the performance or the variance analysis, you can say. This is called as the variance analysis. Variance analysis. So, variance analysis, as I told you, we have to create how many columns? We have to create 5 columns, and 5 columns are, first one is the actual results are the, so first column will be for particulars, then we have to have actual results, at actual activity level, actual results at actual activity level. Then is the flexible budget, for actual activity level, and last is the, you call it as the master budget. Last column is the master budget. If you recall that statement which I discussed with you in the PPT, you will find this statement is the master budget, and this is the column number 1, this is the column number 3, and this is the column number 5. In between this and this, the variance will be called as the sales activity variance, and this column will be known as the flexible budget variance. This is the flexible budget variance. This is the flexible budget variance. This is the column number 2, and this is the column number 4, right. So, these are the total columns, and this is the statement which is called as the variance analysis, or you can call it as summary of the performance. This is the summary of the performance, right. So, now we have created this variance analysis statement, we have created, and in this variance analysis statement we are going to now put the figures, right. Now, what is the, we will start with particulars, and what is our particulars here? Net revenue. What is the net revenue here? Now, actual results at the actual activity level is how much? That will again be in, say you can call it as thousands, the amount will be how much? It is in the, amount will be in the amount in thousands, right. So, what is the actual results at the actual activity level? That is the 76,100,000. Flexible budget again for 76,100,000 level of the revenue, but what was the master budget? Master budget was for the 8 millions. This is for the 8 millions. So, it is 7.6 million is the actual results. We have to convert the budget for 7.6 millions, and the master budget information is the 8 million worth of the revenue. This is the net revenue, and in between we have to calculate the variances. So, if you calculate the variance, this comes out as 400s. Your sales activity has come down by 400,000, and what is the flexible budget variance? There is no variance expected between the flexible budget and the actual results. So, there is nil variance here. We are not going to have, we are not expecting any variance, there should not be any kind of the variance. And now we take the total variable cost. Total variable cost. What is the total variable cost? At this level, the expected was, we will put here 6,400,000, 6,400,000, $6.4 million cost, variable cost was expected, and in proportion to that, if you bring it down, this should be 6,080 for the reduced level of, decreased level of performance, that is for the 7.6 millions worth of revenue. If you are selling worth rupees 7.6 million in the market, your variable cost proportionally should come down to 6,080. But what is the actual variable cost? The actual variable cost, if you, which is given to us, look at the statement here, the actual variable cost is how much? That is the 6,223. It means the variance has come up 6,223. This is 6,223, and now we will have to find out the variance, and if you take the variance here, this variance works out as how much? 143 unfavorable. This variance is 143 unfavorable, this variance is here, and what is the variance between this and this? This variance is 320. This variance is 320. So, it means now if you calculate the, say we have taken the net revenue, we have taken the total variable cost, and now we calculate the contribution margin, right. We will calculate now the contribution margin. So, if you calculate the contribution margin here, what is the contribution margin? Contribution margin, if you calculate this contribution margin, what is the contribution margin here? It is 1377, right, $1377 contribution was expected, which is the revenue level is 7.6 millions and your total variable cost is 6.223 millions. So, it means the margin, contribution margin expected was, or actual contribution margin is 30,77,000, and if you look at the contribution expected at the flexible budget level, that should have been how much? 76 minus 6080, that was expected to be 1520, right. And now the variance here which we have experienced here is, that is the, again the variance is 143, that is negative, that is unfavorable, that is a difference of 1520 minus 1377. So, this is the variance, and same figure has come here, there is no variance in the revenue level, and if you calculate this variance here, it was expected to be how much? 1600,000, and actually it is how much? We have taken it this as a 80, which is unfavorable. So, means naturally this has to be there, that at the 8 million level of sales your contribution expected was 1600,000, and at the budgeted level of the 7.6 million worth of revenue, the contribution expected was 1520. So, there is a negative variance of 80,000. So, this is not very important. The important variance is this, which is 143 unfavorable, which should not have been there, right. Now, we talk about the fixed cost. We talk about the fixed cost. So, what is the fixed cost here? Fixed cost is, now we see that what was the expected fixed cost? Look at the statement, the expected fixed cost was total is 980, but actually it is 981 for the 7.6 million level of the revenue. So, 980 was expected here, and at this level also it was expected to be how much? It was expected to be again the same level, and that is 980, but actually it is $981,000, right. So, now there is a variance here, at this level no variance is expected, but at this level the variance has come up, and that variance is how much? That variance is 1, and that is unfavorable, variance by 1, but that is unfavorable. So, finally, let us now find out the operating income. If you calculate the operating income here, after subtracting the total cost, variable cost and the fixed cost from the sales revenue, so your operating income comes up as how much? At the actual result at actual activity level is, what is this? This is 13377 minus 981, this is something like $396,000, $396,000. How much it is? It is coming up as 144 unfavorable, this plus this, these two, and here it is how much it is? This is 1520 minus 980, this is expected to be how much? That is 520,000, and if you see this, this variance was expected to be, means this and operating income, budgeted operating income at the master budget level expected was how much? That is 620, but actually at the flexible budget level it was expected to come down to 540. So, this variance is going to be certainly there, and that is 80 unfavorable. So, in any case this variance is not important, because your master budget is for the 8 million worth of the revenue, and the actual performance has come down by the 4 lakhs. So, it means it has come down to 7.6 million of the revenue. So, these two columns are important for us, column number 1 and the column number 3, and this variance which has occurred because of the difference between the performance level of the, so two columns, column number 1 and column number 3, and these variances have come up. So, we have seen the variances, negative variance in the variable cost also, and the cause of concern here is that we have seen the variance in the fixed cost also. So, which is not permissible, which is not desirable. So, we will have to look for that what has happened here. So, operating income means we look at this final statement, the operating income which was expected to be $540,000 at the say performance level of 7.6 million worth of revenue, but actually it has come down to $396,000 and there is a negative variance, unfavorable variance of how much? $144,000, which is a cause of concern here. If you look at this condensed statement or the summary report, you can easily find out that this variance has come up because of the two reasons, because both the components of the cost have become say very high as compared to the budgeted level. So, the variable cost has also gone up by $1,43,000 and fixed cost has also gone up by $1,000. So, because of that the total negative variance we have found out here is that is $1,44,000, because of which your operating income has come down from the budgeted level of the 542 $396,000, which is a serious cause of concern. So, after knowing all about this by preparing the summary report or the variance analysis, now we will have to go in detail. We will have to find out now the detailed analysis of this column we have to do, and we have to further dissect these variances, that why this negative variances in the variable cost have occurred, why there are the negative variances in the fixed cost have means why the fixed cost has gone up, why the variable cost has gone up, why the negative variances are in the variable cost, why the negative variances are in the fixed cost, and we will have to go for the further analysis of this column, and on the basis of this information, analysis of these variances, we will have to take the corrective actions, and we will have to make sure that this time the variable cost has increased and affected our operating income, fixed cost has increased, affected our operating income negatively. This should not happen in the next quarter, next time. So, we will analyze this in detail by preparing another statement, and then we will try to find out the reasons and fix up the reasons, so that this type of the variances do not reoccur and they do not affect our operating income negatively. So, that next statement explaining the reasons for these variances, negative variances amounting to total of 144,000, that is the unfavorable variances. I will prepare the next statement, third statement, and that statement will be prepared in the next class, and try to know the reasons about the negative variances which have occurred here in the variable cost and the fixed cost. Thank you very much.